What's going on, everybody? Jeff here. Welcome back to the channel. The chop continues as we are completely range bound with still about 25 minutes left to the trading day. Now, today there was multiple Fed speakers really reiterating their hawkish stance. I want to go over a couple key points that one of the Fed presidents has stated, especially after the Bank of England had stepped in to bail out some really suffering pension funds that kind of had boosted the market, giving some investors a little bit of hope that a Fed pivot might be sooner than they think. So I want to talk a little bit about that, talk about some critical levels as we retested one in a very strong manner yesterday, and then also talk about leading up into CPI, what has happened a few times before and what the charts can look like to give you some comparison, how not to get caught up in the chop, and to prepare when CPI is released, what actions to take out of it, especially if you're playing intraday or 3, 4, 5 day swings. I'm gonna break everything down for you guys. So let's get right into it. First off, take a look at this trend. Now, yesterday, I didn't make a video. I had said to everybody in the pre-market picks, if you're interested, come take a look at it. I had said very early on in the morning, larger time frame, you want to see that hold, or that 371 level was a very critical. Reason why that 371 was very critical is zoom out just a little bit further to this 1 hour chart. You see this line I have drawn right here. We broke through that and it was, was acted as very strong resistance 1, 2, 3 times. It was a really good flat top, tried to get over it. That after hours and overnight sessions at the end of the month, couldn't do it, finally broke through it. Every time we see a resistance level broken, a lot of times they want to see that old resistance become new support, and that's exactly what happened. Now, bulls are still hanging on. They have not run out of steam just yet. But let me talk a little bit about what was fueling, this run, besides obviously just the fact that we moved down 55 points in 15 trading days. That is a significant sell-off. Anytime you get massive moves, in one direction over a sustained period of time with really little relief, there gets to be exhaustion, whether it's buyer exhaustion or seller exhaustion. It's exactly what we were seeing, on top of the Bank of England saying that their 1 trillion in pension fund investments could have been wiped out without intervention. Now, I made another video a couple days ago talking about what this kind of looks like when it comes to United States terms, Fed policy, and investors, in the United States stock market, just feeling that, listen, the Fed pivot might come sooner than anticipated. Now, seeing the fact that the Fed has maintained their action in a very strong manner, and we have seen this numerous times, over the past few months. We watched the Jackson Hole Symposium, CPI come through, just increasingly hard sell-off, saying, listen, as much as investors were starting to price in a pivot towards sometime between March, April of next year, all the way to potentially July and August, the Fed continues to reiterate, no, we're not going to. And they've really kind of been a little bit more firm on their stance rather than their soft wording, as we have seen as of late. But this happening, over in the UK might have given investors a little bit of hope, that the Fed might have to pivot. Couple that with all of the drama that is happening with Credit Suisse. Is it going to be another Lehman style crash? Obviously, Lehman Brothers had went under. Now, days and weeks before Lehman Brothers went under, they had said, listen, everything's fine. There's nothing to worry about. So clearly, we have to take these articles with a grain of salt. However, there was other, massive institutions back in that same time frame, 2008, 2009, that were bailed out. And obviously the Fed had to step back in to be able to kind of save the economy and save the entire markets. So long-term bulls are still banking on that, So clearly, we're in just a little bit of a chop happening as of right now. Now, today, multiple Fed speakers. I'm just going to highlight a few things, First of all, Fed President Kashari said, listen, the bar to shifting our stance on policy is very high. He expects they will see cracks in the U.S. financial markets, but the bar is still set very high, Meaning a chance of this pivot happening, despite all of the rumors, despite all of the other economical and financial issues, the bar is still very high because inflation will just get much further out of control than it already is. All right. Lastly, take a look at this tweet right here. Big banks need a lot more capital. Now, we've been suffering with this liquidity crisis for quite some time. You zoom out a little bit further. we've talked about this. I've mentioned this in videos saying, the sell-off, these pops that we're seeing, as much as they're bear market rallies, they're also what's known as liquidity grabs. Okay, and a liquidity grab is really just enough of a push to lure in, more, bulls to be able to swipe their capital. Unfortunately, most of that, buying over the past 6 months has been done by retail. Institutions have been in this game a lot longer than the average retail investors, and they know that, the path to quantitative tightening, bringing money out of the system, just, and the price earnings ratio just being, at an all-time high, just will slowly lead to market to the downside. Okay, so this thing, what that Fed Kashari had stated is just remains a little bit more true, especially with all of what we hear about. Now, last thing I want to talk about very quickly is ahead of CPI, which is going to be released in just a few days next week on the 13th. Okay, so as I zoom in just a little bit further, and I'm just going to zoom out again. All right, we're seeing this little bit of chop that is starting to happen anywhere between that, really a kind of wide range, that 371 to kind of 378 area on the SPY, that 374, 375 is kind of that pivot area. But when you zoom out a little bit further, you can clearly see that there were a few other times where we've had this insane chop. Okay, you go all the way back into the end of May. We've talked about this time frame before as well. The end of May, leading up into June, volume kind of subsides a little bit. Okay, that's when you see a lot of fake outs happening. A lot of these setups aren't really working. There's no trend to be had. Anytime it looks like there's an uptrend, it immediately gets crushed, and a downtrend immediately gets bought back up, and vice versa, leading up to the CPI numbers to release. Now, anytime you see a consolidation, it is always building for another leg. Now, does that mean we're going to leg up? Mean we're going to leg down? You have to wait for the direction to be shown to you. But the longer that we channel, the bigger the move that is expected to happen. And this channel was from all the way, I think it was like the 27th until it was released on the 10th. But I think there's a little bit of a leak at the end of the 9th. And that's when we finally broke down that level, that 407 area. Give it just a few days, we went all the way down to 364. Massive, massive move. Same thing had happened, prior up, to the CPI that was released in August or in July. Last month's CPI was a little bit different. Okay, now everybody expected, okay, because the fuel was down, that CPI was going to come in lower than the month prior. We had this slow grind up. Even that pre-market reached all the way up to that 415, came through, rejected right off that level. Like I say, charts have a very funny way of telling a story. Okay, and you can clearly zoom out and see that 412 level over a larger time frame was solid support multiple times. Break through it. I'll say it again. Old support, new resistance, old resistance, new support. It's very telling. And clearly we just continue to sell off. So let's see what happens over the next few days. If we channel, expect a big move. Don't bet on anything. Just wait for the direction to show you. Okay, you're gonna have plenty of time to be able to catch the move. It doesn't, happen all at once. Obviously, we've seen this play out, and occurs over a few days. Okay, if not longer than a few days, as we've clearly seen all from the last CPI release. Okay, and if we do kind of get that slow grind, just be hesitant to chase that upside or bet against it, because naturally we are the last people to know the information. So guys, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.